When it comes to the Nintendo Switch, ever since its release, March 3rd of 2017, we generally have never ever seen a price drop. We've gotten a select number of bundles that include games, and generally it's not discounted too much, and right around the beginning of the holiday season for Black Friday, we may see a bundle that gives you an additional game. However, never ever have we seen the Nintendo Switch in any of its iterations fall below $300. Unless you go to GameStop and buy a used one for $280. I don't recommend that. But in Nintendo's attempt to finally open up the market for people who maybe can't afford a premium $300 console and have a 2DS, a 3DS, they want to convert them to being Nintendo Switch owners, and they're doing it with the Nintendo Switch Lite. The Nintendo Switch Lite is only $200 compared to $300 for a Nintendo Switch, and loses the main functionality of the Switch, which is to switch between a handheld and a portable console. Not only is it significantly smaller, but you got a lot less in the box. So first, let's take a look at the packaging for the Nintendo Switch Lite. As I previously mentioned, it's a lot smaller than the package for the Nintendo Switch in height, width, and girth. The Nintendo Switch, especially the V2 packaging, focuses on the many different forms and functions of the Nintendo Switch. The Switch Lite shows you in almost every single shot, in every single shot, it being held in a hand, to show that it is definitely a handheld console. And the top says Nintendo. Let's go ahead and open this bad boy up. Now, the Nintendo Switch Lite releases on Friday, September 20th, 2019. I happened to get my hands on a early one by a local shop that was selling it early. So yay. I also had to drive 6 hours for it. So that's what it cost to me. What did it cost? Everything. So we open it up, and here is our Nintendo Switch Lite in beautiful packaging. Right below that, we lift this up. We have documentation and a single power cord. Something really interesting to point out here, I have an original Nintendo Switch power brick and the new Nintendo Switch Lite power brick. They are completely identical in power consumption, input, output, everything. The only difference is it's a different serial number, they use a different font, and the new one is made in China and the old one is made in the Philippines. They're both the exact same length. Part of the reason the Nintendo Switch Lite's packaging is so much smaller is mostly due to the fact that there's nothing in the box compared to the Nintendo Switch, which as soon as you open it, it presents itself as being with separate Joy-Cons. And below that, having compartments for the Nintendo Switch dock, power cord, documentation, Joy-Con grip, and the Joy-Con rails. Instead, you don't have any of that. So, boom. That's it. That'd be the only thing. The yellow is not a very bright, high gloss yellow. It's sort of like a gold-inspired yellow, almost kind of a cheese yellow. In this shot here, I'm going to do my best for color correction. That way it appears the exact same way that it appears for me in real life. While it's sort of cheese yellow, it's not as cheese yellow as Pokemon Yellow. It's only a shade off from the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee limited edition yellow, as opposed to the ARMS neon yellow, which is a much more green yellow. So overall, its yellowness isn't that loud, which is really nice. If we were to inspect the top of the Switch Lite, we have ourselves the power button, the volume rocker, some vents for heat, a headphone jack, and the game card slot. These two small black circles that you see right here, these are actually Phillips head screws, and that would be how you take apart the Switch Lite. And if we look at the bottom here, we have an area for the micro SD card. We have two more Phillips head screws, USB-C, and my finger is covering up the serial number. And if we look at the bottom here, we have these two holes. I believe this is going to be where the sound is coming out of. I'm not too sure. We're going to find out when we turn it on. And inspecting the front of the Switch instead of the 4 buttons that we have on the left Joy-Con, which you may be used to, instead now we have a firm D-pad. When comparing the D-pad to, say, the D-pad of the Pro Controller, it does have a similar feel to it. There's not as much travel time, and also there's a much more muted sound as opposed to on the Pro Controller, which actually is somewhat audible when you press down in a direction. When comparing the buttons on the ABXY, the actuation point feels a little bit further down, as opposed to the Joy-Con, which as soon as you press it, you immediately feel it being registered. So similar to how the Pro Controller has a little bit of travel before it's finally pushed down, that's a similar feel to the buttons here on the Switch Lite. The plus and minus buttons that appear at the top of the Switch are the exact same buttons, they have the exact same feel as the Joy-Cons. And when it comes to the joysticks that are on here, they feel exactly the same as the Joy-Cons. Now, I do not know if they've updated anything on the inside to possibly address the drifting issue. If you want to learn more about that, I recommend checking out my buddy Spawnwave. He does lots of teardowns, and I'm sure Friday he's going to be doing a teardown of the Nintendo Switch Lite. On the Nintendo Switch, it does have this glass bezel that goes around the screen, and it's black right here, so it doesn't really appear visible, as opposed to the Switch Lite, that it's colored back there, so because of that, you can clearly see where the plexiglass begins and where the screen begins. And then the last thing to note is, similar to the Pro Controller, which I literally just learned about this, there's an LED around the home button, and here on the Switch Lite, you can see an LED ring around the home button. With no further ado, let's go ahead and boot up the Switch Lite. I think it's funny that they still use the Switch logo of the Joy-Con attaching on a system that doesn't have detachable Joy-Cons. Just by going through like the whole setting up page, it feels nice. It feels really nice in the hand. Also, disclaimer, I don't have big hands. I really don't. I kind of have girly hands. They're bigger than a child's hands. I'm not a guy with like big, brawly, masculine sausage finger hands. Instead, like, the Pro Controller is like a very comfortable full fit for me, as opposed to the Nintendo Switch that, while my hands feel cramped over here, it's almost impossible for me to reach things in the middle. So if I were to play a game that works exclusively with the touchscreen like Mario Maker 2 or Polybridge, it's hard for me, and I actually prefer to remove the Joy-Cons when I do something like that. Here for the Switch Lite, while the screen isn't much smaller, I do have like great control and I can type onto this no problem. The shoulder buttons feel very similar to the Joy-Con shoulder buttons. However, instead of that crisp clickiness, it has sort of more of a muted sound. Instead, you're going to be hearing all of the buttons that have a muted sound. It makes a lot of sense because this is something you're going to be playing in public, and people are going to be hearing it all the time. I think that's a nice little attention to detail that they decided to do. Oh, I like the D-pad. The D-pad feels solid. I really like the clickiness of the D-pad. During the setup screen, I have an option here for import user. You can copy an existing user and use it on an additional console or transfer it entirely. Do you still have the console with your user you want to import? Yes. Will you keep using this previous console in addition to this one? Yes. Link Nintendo account. System update is required, so we'll be attending to that later. So the Nintendo Switch Lite at ship date is going to be shipping with system firmware number. Oh, it doesn't tell me the firmware. It just says system update is ready. That was a very fast update. So because of that, I'm starting to think that it was on 8.1 and now it just went to 9.0, which that's the most recent firmware update that happened that took literally that fast. I don't know if I'll keep it in there, but it was, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds. Yes, and now we're on version 9.0. And there's sort of a weird feeling here. It's sort of the same feeling if you've ever owned a 3DS and a 3DS XL. That while the 3DS XL is a bigger screen, the non-XL version is a smaller screen, but it feels more crisp. Obviously, the pixel density is going to be more tight, so because of that, it's sort of a better looking screen. I'm not gonna lie, when I picked this up, I didn't think that I was actually going to use this because I very rarely play the Switch in handheld mode because I'm recording footage for you guys a lot of the time, but this feels nice. One thing that I did notice almost immediately, the light, these are definitely the speakers here at the bottom. This is where the sound is coming out of. And if you are in a position that you're resting your hands like this, the sound becomes very muffled. If you have larger hands, your hands may be gripping around the outside of the Switch and then covering up the speakers. Also, if you're laying in bed and you're playing with your Switch on your tummy like a sea otter, there's a very good chance that you're going to be covering up the speakers. The screen looks really good. Like, I am really enjoying the crispness of this screen. Okay, it's very hard to play the game like that, with it not facing me at all, and I have to like completely lean over in order to see. So what do I think overall about the Nintendo Switch Lite? I really like it. If you're someone who has a lot of important data on their Nintendo Switch, if you're a content creator, or if you just sink so many hours into your Nintendo Switch and you want a system that, let's say, is more expendable, then maybe the Nintendo Switch Lite is a good second system for you. So you keep this one at home, and then this one is your on the go. Or maybe this is the family's Nintendo Switch and you want your own, which makes sense, especially with Pokemon and Animal Crossing coming out. You're going to want a lot of single player data, so whatever it may be. If this is going to be your first time purchasing a Nintendo Switch, going from the full Switch to the Switch Lite, you're not losing a lot of the experience. You're still going to be able to play this with another controller far away in a tabletop mode. You're still going to be able to play this with extended battery life, which is fantastic. So do I think this is a worthy replacement of the 2DS XL? Absolutely. And at a price point being $100 less than the Switch, it's a great way to get in here. Anyways, guys, I'm wrapping up this video. I want to thank you for checking it out. If you haven't done so, be sure to leave a like down below. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications. Until next time, Austin John out.